Okay, board, we are now to the action items to 9.1, which is local board approved courses. And let's get a motion on the floor, and then we'll open it up to Dr. Talley, who's presenting this.
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the recommendations of the local board approved courses for high school and middle school for 2020-2021.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Green has submitted. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Dr. Powers. Okay, now, let's open it up to Dr. Talley, who can walk us through these recommendations, and then we'll take a vote. Dr. Talley?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Every year about this time, I bring to the board local courses that we offer in Lexington 1 that are not necessarily offered in other school districts. We offer these courses to support additional personalization efforts for our students in middle and high school. These are not courses that are listed in the State Department's Education Activity Coding System. In your handout, I have highlighted in red the courses that we're recommending and asking you for approval for this year. You will see there are not many, but I have reviewed them, as has Dr. Rivers, and we ask for your approval on these courses.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Talley. Board, are there any questions or comments regarding these approved courses for the high school and the middle school? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of these, the 2020-2021 local board approved courses for high school and middle school, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. At this time, we'll go to 9.2. Do I hear a motion that the board adopt a resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $11,400,000 general obligation bonds of Lexington County School District 1?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the board adopt a resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $11,400,000 general obligation bonds of Lexington County School District Number 1, South Carolina. The bonds are to be issued in 2 or more series. The bond resolution will prescribe the purposes for which the proceeds shall be expended for the payment of bonds and other matters relating thereto.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Guyton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Okay. At this time, I'm going to call on Mr. Salters to walk us through this resolution. Mr. Salters?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is a standard operating procedure that the district has done for many years. This process has 3 functions. The first function in this bond sale is used to make the December 1st installment purchase revenue bond payment for 2013 series bonds, and this is basically a process that was set up in the early 2000s that's similar to it. It's essentially a lease purchase process where a corporation is set up and builds a building and then leases that building back to a school district. It was a financing method that was used commonly in the state during that time. It has since been removed as an option by the state legislature. And so we are committed to paying, basically making our house payment, if you will, on an ongoing basis until approximately 2030, 2031. And so there's 2 payments. The first one occurs in December, and then the second one occurs later on in the year in the May timeframe. And so the 2 series that were involved, the projects that were related to these were Carolina Springs Elementary and Carolina Springs Middle. And then the 2015 series was Red Bank Elementary and Gilbert Primary renovations that occurred. And then New Providence Elementary was built with that series as well. So the payments would be made with these. And then the third function of this is to provide approximately $5.255 million of capital funds associated with our 8% debt capacity. And those funds are described in Exhibit A1 as to the limitations of how those funds could be used, and the intent of the district would be to use those funds to help close the gap between the original facility study needs that were approximately $393 million and the referendum needs that we ultimately voted on, $365 million. So those HVAC needs and other needs that were identified in the facility study certainly are still there and haven't gone away, and the strategy that was developed at that time was to use this funding to be able to help offset those expenditures going forward. So again, not to exceed $11,400,000 and used to make those two payments, and then also to provide some additional capital funding for needs across the system. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Salters?
Yes, Mr. Salters, I have a question. On page 19, it says, to maximize the amount of proceeds available to defray the cost of the improvements, the superintendent may elect that the district will not pay any bank counsel fees and to so provide in any solicitation for the purchase of the bond. Have we agreed to that anywhere in here?
What paragraph are you in?
I'm sorry,
Ms. Garris.
page 19, and it's under I, which is about the second paragraph.
Section, are you on the, you're on the bond resolution?
Yeah, Article 3, sorry.
Page 19, Section 3, number 16, 17?
Letter I.
Okay, my page numbers must be different than yours.
It's right before the end of Article 3. Second to last paragraph.
And I've got it right here. I'm just looking at. Okay, so your question is regarding letter I?
Yes. I'm wondering if we have included in here anywhere that we may elect to not pay any bank counsel fees.
I'll have to get back to you on that, Ms. Garris.
Okay, that's fine. I've got another question. So a few pages past that, it's going to be page 37 on mine. It's right after the end of Article 10.
Okay.
Okay, so
At the end of Article 10 or after Article 10?
it's right after Article 10 on page 37, where it starts off at the top, State of South Carolina, County of Lexington.
Okay. I, the
And-
undersigned secretary of the board? Is that what you're?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that page? Okay.
Yeah, in that third paragraph, it says that the adoption of said resolution was duly moved and seconded and adopted by those present by a unanimous vote. I don't know if we can change this afterwards. It wasn't unanimous last year, and it won't be this year. And so that just brings me back to Exhibit A. And, I mean, I know you're just doing your job and giving us the information that you were told to give us, so, I mean, don't take this personally. But we have a list of improvements that include land, IT, school safety equipment, renovations, additions, repairs, building and equipping new facilities for $5+ million. And once again, I have no details. So this is it. That's all we have. So we're basically asking the board to write a blank check to the district for $5+ million. And I'm just not okay with that.
Well, and as I said last year, one of the reasons that those lists of improvements are listed there in that manner is because from time to time, you have unforeseen items come up, and you need flexibility to be able to use funds to redirect to those items. As an example, I'm going to River Bluff High School tomorrow morning at about 7 o'clock to take a look at a retaining wall that's on the bus loop that is failing. That could be a significant expenditure. If we didn't have the flexibility within these funds to be able to redirect the funds to improve that retaining wall, we would have to potentially look at fund balance as a source of funding to cover that cost. So the idea is you have a plan, which we do, which is the facility study, and then the original facility study. You work that plan, and then if there's some unforeseen cost associated with an emergency, you have flexibility to be able to use the funds in that manner. We do that on advice of our bond counsel and our financial advisors, and that's pretty much a standard practice that they recommend across school districts in the state, just to maximize the flexibility of the funds in case of an emergency. And that, I can't think of ironically, I used River Bluff as an example recently in a conversation. I said, if we lost a retaining wall out there, it could be a significant expenditure. And here I am going to look at a retaining wall, so,
And I can vouch for the retaining wall because I walk there every morning and it's a little scary looking right now.
yeah.
Right, and I
So-
get that, and I know that you only, for bond resolution purposes, you only have to include, the bare minimum. As a board, I just think we need to ask for more details. We need a capital improvement plan. We need to know itemized details about every school, what's needed at that school, how much it's going to cost, when it needs to be repaired, what needs to be repaired there. So that way we can keep up with it as well and know what's going on.
To use more, so education finance is incredibly confusing. So to use more community-friendly words, if we think of the bonds as our mortgage and we think of the 8% money as our home equity line of credit, if you will, help me reconcile how we eventually pay the interest. I mean, pay the principal, okay? Because obviously we're issuing bonds to pay a previous borrowed amount. So, the perception would be we're using borrowed money to pay for borrowed money. Eventually, the piper comes due and we have to pay the principal. So can you just kind of walk through the mechanism of that and what that looks like?
And it's funny that you asked that question because I literally just had this conversation with Deborah outside. And here's the way you need to think about the lease purchase. So you have a corporation who built a building, okay? So think of that corporation essentially as the lien holder, if you will. Now, we established an arrangement with them to pay them back. They are not the creditor. Okay, we had to go out and get a mortgage
Sure.
to pay that debt, if you will. And so
Well, technically, they own the asset.
they own the asset, and so we're buying the asset from them, and we are buying that asset from them by making a payment to them. Okay, just like the bank owns my car, and I'm making payments to them to get that car, ultimately to get the title. Eventually, we will, in 2030 and 2031, we will get the title, if you will, the deed to these properties. So they set that up, they own it, and we're making payments to them. We had to go get financing to make those payments. So we went out to, we're going out to the bond market
Right.
to get the financing to make the payments. If we default on the payments, then the asset becomes not ours anymore. I mean, we won't be able to get the asset.
Right.
It's pretty important we get the asset since it's, 3 of our school buildings, complete buildings. So did that answer your question, or does that help you at all?
It does. And of the ones that are left in the previous corp, that's the 2013 and 2015 bonds. Is that it that's left in there?
Yes.
Set to mature in
Yes.
2031, I believe. So
That's right.
this mechanism will continue until 2031, and then the asset is officially ours.
Yes.
And then at that point, during this time period, we will have been making payments for the 6.2 that we're issuing today. We will be making payments along the way to satisfy
That's right.
that
We get
debt.
tax revenue in to make those payments.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And then of the 8% money, if that's our line of credit and we're putting 5.2 million against it, where do we sit in terms of how much we have borrowed against our 8% money?
And so I sent along with the resolution, the overall schedule. And if you look at in the board packet, if you look at like page 3, it gives you basically a layout of the capacity that we anticipate being available to us, and you notice that we're looking at 5.2 million roughly carrying on forward. We do get some additional capacity as we move down the system as things get paid off, and so our financial advisors, really, when we laid out this referendum program, factored in that gap or that amount of money roughly going forward each year, because we have different needs across the system that are going to come up over the course of really the next, right on. One of those big needs that will come up is our as Dr. Talley will tell you, is our device refresh. And so that's going to, we rolled devices out last year. We have a 4-year rollout on those, so we're going to have to buy devices again. And so these funds are available to be able to do that on that cycle, along with the other capital improvements we have. But and then page 6 of that schedule shows you the millage target that
Right.
that we would hit to keep that that debt schedule. Now, one of the benefits of all of this is when the financial advisors laid out the original debt schedule, they factored in essentially an interest rate of about 5%, being conservative, and we're hitting the market right now at about 2%. So that's a tremendous savings, when you're talking about borrowing $150 million. So it gives us more room in that schedule to either be able to have some more flexibility to, in the future, potentially leverage, use more home equity line to use these analogies, which is a really good example, or maybe reduce our line of credit if we chose to do that. And that, essentially what you would do there is lower your millage rate so that the money coming in, because you're not having to service the debt as much, so you could lower that millage rate going forward.
Sure, sure.
I think in this district, with the way we're growing, the strategy is probably going to be to keep that millage rate right about where it is and continue to use that growth, because we're going to need more schools. And when you have 5.5 million square feet of facilities, those facilities all have needs to keep them up. We have, Ms. Garris sent me something recently about, an issue in a ceiling. Turns out that was a roof leak. That's a great example. I mean, we have issues come up in our schools just like you do at home. And so we're going to have the sources of funds to be able to pay for those things. And that does not come from the state. It does not come from the feds. Those are local responsibilities.
And at any given time, our pools from which to pull are either money that's left in the capital account, which is roughly 10 million, something along those lines, the balance of the 8% money, whatever we may have there, and then the only other is, of course, our general fund balance. And
So-
those are our 3 areas we can pull from for capital.
We actually have a fourth right now, and that would be the
Well, the
$365 million
yeah,
bond
yeah,
referendum.
right.
Yes, sir.
Outside of
that.
outside of the bond referendum, on any given day,
Yes, sir.
those are the 3 areas from
The
which
general fund balance, the capital, funds that are available, the 10 million, and then the balance of the 8%.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to say, I don't have a problem with the 6 million installment bonds. It's just not knowing what the other 5 million is going to. And it worries me that we have schools like Gilbert Elementary and Pillion Middle that we have to basically demolish parts of it. Whereas if we had something that we could follow along a timeline and say, okay, it's time for this to be replaced, or this needs attention, instead of just 5 million and we don't know where it's going. That's all. But thank you so much for all these other reports. Those are very helpful.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments, board? Okay. We now have the resolution on the floor, which Dr. Guyton presented. Dr. Powers seconded. All in favor of the bond resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Jada's opposed.
Okay, so it's 6-1, and the motion carries.